President Obama says that help won't include American troops on the ground.
We will not be sending U.S. troops back into combat in Iraq, but I have asked my national security team to prepare a range of other options that could help support Iraq security forces, and I'll be reviewing those options in the days ahead.
Plus, the crisis in Ukraine. The president there is promising to punish the people who shot down a military plane with nearly 50 people on board. And an immigration crisis in the U.S. Hundreds of children coming into the country every day illegally and, in many cases, alone. The problem is, where will they stay after they cross the border? Hello, everyone. I'm Frederica Whitfield. First up, Iraq's government is rushing to recruit volunteer fighters in the face of brutal militants who want to take over Baghdad. Shiite supporters are answering the call in Baghdad, boarding buses ready to take up arms and fight. They're trying to beat back radical militants from the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, also known as ISIS. The group took over Mosul this week, Iraq's second largest city, and they didn't meet much resistance from Iraqi defense forces. Police and soldiers ran from their posts, taking off their uniforms and fleeing. This video shows militants stomping on those uniforms right there. The United States is watching the situation very carefully. President Obama said yesterday the U.S. will not send troops back into combat in Iraq, but he will review a range of options. The rapid collapse in Iraq has put the U.S. and the whole world on edge, and everyone is watching to see if ISIS will follow through on its threat to march on to Baghdad. We have crews covering this story around the world. Nick Robertson is on the phone for us from Baghdad. Athena Jones is live for us at the White House. Let's start in Baghdad. Nick, the situation there today, what is it, and what are Iraq's leaders saying this morning?
Frederica, there is concern in Baghdad. There is some amount of panic buying. There is an increased level of security, and we are seeing young men volunteering to join the Shia militia and go and fight with the Iraqi army north of Baghdad. There is a sense here today that ISIS's rapid advance towards Baghdad has been slowed by some of these fighters being deployed to the north of the city. The Prime Minister, Nouri al-Maliki, went to a very important town, Samarra, which was the scene of a very bloody attack on an important Shia shrine in 2006. It led to a massive onslaught of sectarian bloodletting that year, continued the following year. Mr. Maliki said this is the town where the defense will begin, and he said it was not by chance that so many army officers put down their uniforms and ran away. This is what he said.
What happened recently did not result from a lack of weapons, but it was a conspiracy. It was a trick. There was no collusion when orders made by people we know were made to some army formations to withdraw, which resulted in confusion that we do not want to happen in the ranks of our army.
Now, I know by talking to tribal leaders that offers were made to senior army officers to tell them to put down their weapons. If they left their posts, they would be allowed to go free. And today I have talked by phone with an army officer who is now in hiding in northern Iraq. He said that he found all the soldiers at his post had deserted. He was forced to take off his uniform and is now hiding with a family in a small town, he says, where ISIS has now arrived and are negotiating with the leaders of that town to take control of that town in the north of Iraq. Frederica?
All right, Nick Robertson, we'll check back with you later. Thanks so much. Let's bring in CNN's Athena Jones now, live at the White House for the latest on how the president is planning to respond to this developing and growing crisis. Athena, if ISIS carries out its threat to march toward Baghdad, what, if anything, can the U.S. do?
Well, that's the question, hi, Frederica, that the president and his national security team are trying to answer this weekend and in the coming days. The president himself is spending Father's Day weekend in California, but he's maintaining close contact with his national security team, which is working to come up with a range of options, short of putting U.S. troops on the ground to try to help Iraq force back these Sunni insurgents. But the president has said that any larger solution to this is not going to be purely a military one. In order to have have a long-term resolution to this crisis, it's going to require Iraq's government to make some political changes.
Iraqi security forces have proven unable to defend a number of cities, which has allowed the terrorists to overrun a part of Iraq's territory.
3 years after President Obama pulled U.S. troops out of Iraq, he says the growing sectarian crisis there now threatens America's national security. The president and his advisors are discussing a range of options, including airstrikes, to help Iraq fight off the Sunni militant group that has captured its second largest city, Mosul. He says Iraq's government won't get any U.S. military help unless Iraq's Shiite Prime Minister, Nouri al-Maliki, makes big changes.
This should be a wake-up call. Iraq's leaders have to demonstrate a willingness to make hard decisions.
Maliki has long resisted calls to strike power-sharing deals with his Sunni Muslim and Kurdish rivals, deals that could help bring stability to the oil-rich country.
Unfortunately, what we've seen from the Prime Minister over the 8-9 years that he's been in office is that this is a man who is very reluctant to bargain with his rivals.
Shiite Iran has an interest in preventing Iraq from falling to Sunni militants and could help the U.S. push Maliki to bargain.
Iraq is one of those places in the Middle East where the United States and Iran actually have something of a confluence of interests.
Meanwhile, Republicans are criticizing the president's Iraq policy, saying it was a mistake not to leave some U.S. forces behind.
I predicted that this would happen when they decided not to have a residual force, and anybody tells you they couldn't isn't telling the truth.
A president under pressure at home, pressing Iraqis to do more to help themselves.
Our troops and the American people and the American taxpayers made huge investments and sacrifices in order to give Iraqis the opportunity to chart a better course, a better destiny. But ultimately, they're going to have to seize it.
Now, the president is going to be reviewing the options his team provides in the coming days, but he's warned it's going to take several days. Any plan for U.S. action is going to take several days to put together, so this is not going to be happening overnight. Frederica?
All right, thanks so much, Athena Jones. We'll return to the topic a bit later.